Greetings, explorers of the shadows and seekers of hidden truth. You have entered the portal of the unknown, where the curtains between the visible and the invisible dissolve, revealing the deepest mysteries of existence. Here, we unravel long-forgotten secrets, explore sacred texts from a new perspective, and challenge what we have been taught about the spiritual realm. Every word recorded in the scriptures holds encrypted messages, clues to a higher knowledge that few have dared to comprehend. Today, our journey takes us into a breathtaking vision, a moment when the heavens opened and a mortal prophet witnessed a spectacle that defies human logic. Prepare for a deep dive into Revelation, as we uncover one of the most enigmatic accounts in Scripture, the celestial vision of the prophet Ezekiel. Ezekiel was no ordinary man. Chosen to be the voice of an invisible kingdom, he received visions that pushed the limits of human perception. In the first chapter of the book that bears his name, he presents us with a haunting description of celestial beings unlike anything we could ever imagine. These are not the simple angels in white robes with golden harps that many envision. On the contrary, they are creatures of multiple faces, radiant wings, and bodies emitting a metallic glow, exuding an otherworldly energy. This vision struck him with indescribable force. A glimpse of the divine throne, a spectacle of light and movement that seemed to bend the laws of physics. But what does this manifestation truly mean? Are these merely symbolic representations, or is there a deeper meaning hidden within these descriptions? In Ezekiel chapter 1, we find the account of these enigmatic entities. He describes beings that defy any earthly concept. Each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight. Their feet were like those of a calf and gleamed like burnished bronze. Ezekiel 1:6-7. Imagine witnessing such a scene. Beings with not just one face, but 4, looking in all directions simultaneously. The face of a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle, each representing a principle, a cosmic force, a fundamental archetype of creation. Their wings stretched out in a synchronized dance, moving without ever deviating from their course. Their straight, sturdy legs upheld an imposing presence, while their feet shone as if forged from celestial metal. This description does not align with the angelic figures we traditionally envision. So what exactly were these creatures? Were they symbolic representations of spiritual forces, physical manifestations of a higher reality, or something even more unsettling? Descriptions of advanced technology so incomprehensible to Ezekiel that he could only depict it using his cultural references. Some scholars suggest that these visions may point to something beyond the spiritual, hinting at a cosmic presence that challenges our traditional religious conceptions. But before we dive into speculative theories, we must understand the context of these revelations. Ezekiel received this vision during a time of deep crisis. The people of Israel were in exile, their faith was shaken, and their connection to the divine seemed severed. Then, suddenly, the heavens opened, and he saw something he could never forget. The question that echoes from ancient times to this very day is, what is the true meaning of this vision? Are the cherubim merely poetic representations of divine power, or is a deeper, hidden knowledge being conveyed through these descriptions? If these beings truly exist, what is their role in the grand design of creation? Are they guardians of celestial mysteries, intermediaries between the divine and humanity? Or are they something far more complex, something that our limited minds have yet to fully grasp? At this point, we're only beginning to unravel the hidden layers of this fascinating account. What comes next will take us even deeper into Ezekiel's revelation. As we analyze every detail of this vision, we will uncover secrets that may transform the way we understand reality. After all, this is not just an ancient story, it is a riddle that spans the ages, waiting to be deciphered. The cherubim in Ezekiel's narrative represent the living and active presence of God, guiding and executing his divine will. They are not merely symbolic figures, but direct manifestations of divine power in action, beings whose very essence reflects the majesty and omnipotence of the Creator. Unlike the common perception of angels as passive messengers who simply deliver divine orders, cherubim are active agents, driving forces that shape humanity's destiny according to the celestial will. Their presence signifies more than just vigilance. They are instruments of divine justice, those who intervene at critical moments in history, those who, with a single movement, can bring protection or judgment. The description Ezekiel provides of these beings is both astonishing and profoundly mysterious. With their multiple faces and wings that radiate a supernatural glow, the cherubim symbolize God's omniscience and omnipresence, for they look in all directions without ever deviating from their path. This feature is not merely decorative, it represents God's very vision, which sees all, judges all, and understands all. They are the manifestation of divine sovereignty spanning the ages, watching over the events of the world and stepping in when necessary. But their mission goes beyond observation. They are celestial warriors, those who enforce order when chaos threatens to consume everything. If we examine the imagery of cherubim in other biblical passages, we will notice that they always appear at moments when the separation between the divine and the earthly becomes most evident. They are the guardians of Eden after the fall of Adam and Eve, positioned with flaming swords to prevent humans from returning to the tree of life. They are also found above the Ark of the Covenant niches, representing God's presence among his people, a constant reminder that connection with the divine demands reverence and respect. In Ezekiel's vision, their presence is even more grand and terrifying, for their movement is not random, it follows God's very glory, leading the prophet's vision through a path of revelation and awe. The depth of this symbolism raises a crucial question. What is the true nature of these beings? Are they merely spiritual figures, metaphorical representations of divine authority? Or is there something more, something beyond what we can fully comprehend? Some theological perspectives suggest that cherubim are not just guardians, but executors of plans that transcend human understanding. The battle between light and darkness is not a simple struggle of good versus evil, but a cosmic conflict between primordial forces where each piece on the chessboard has a purpose. The cherubim, in this sense, are emissaries of this absolute will, ensuring that the Creator's order is never challenged without consequence. But this interpretation leads us to another unsettling question. If the cherubim represent order and divine sovereignty, what does their presence in Ezekiel's vision mean? Was God preparing a great movement in human history? The appearance of these beings indicates that something profound is about to unfold, that the structure of the spiritual world is in motion, bringing about changes invisible to mortal eyes. What Ezekiel witnessed was not just a celestial spectacle, but a warning, a coded message about the fate of humanity. The mere fact that these beings move, following the divine presence, means that cosmic forces are at play, forces that could alter the course of mankind. The cherubim are not mere spectators. They are agents of a higher reality, where the battle between light and darkness transcends time. This spiritual war is not limited to what we can see and understand. It takes place in dimensions beyond our grasp, where the fate of nations, souls, and even the universe itself is decided. Ezekiel's vision reveals that divine presence is not static, but dynamic, interacting with creation in a constant and profound way. If the cherubim move, it is because God is acting. And if God is acting, it means something monumental is about to occur. The question that remains, however, is this: are we truly prepared to understand what this vision really means? Or are we still limited by our inability to see beyond what we have been taught? What comes next may reveal even more about the purpose of these beings and the true impact their presence has on humanity. Ezekiel also witnessed the glory of God departing from the temple, a symbolic act that reveals the severity of human corruption. This moment is not merely a dramatic scene within the prophetic narrative. It is one of the most profound declarations about the fate of a civilization that abandons its spiritual principles. The withdrawal of divine glory is not just a physical or symbolic departure, but a deep rupture between God and his people. When the Creator, who once dwelled among men, chooses to remove his presence, it marks the beginning of an inevitable collapse. The temple, which was the heart of Israel's spiritual life, loses its essence, becoming nothing more than an empty structure, devoid of purpose and protection. And when the divine withdraws, what remains but the advance of destruction? In chapter 10, verse 18, it is written, "Then the glory of the Lord departed from over the threshold of the temple and stopped above the cherubim." This passage describes a crucial moment of transition. The cherubim who symbolize God's active presence now become witnesses and bearers of his withdrawal. They, who once represented the covenant and the closeness of the Almighty with his people, now move away, carrying with them the visible manifestation of celestial glory. This movement does not happen by chance. It is the direct consequence of the corruption that has spread among the priests, the leaders, and the entire nation. Idolatry, injustice, and disregard for the commandments have defiled the temple. God, who once inhabited it, now withdraws, and this withdrawal is a harbinger of judgment. What happens when the divine presence departs? Chaos takes shape, and humanity faces the consequences of its own rebellion. Without the protection of the Creator, all that remains is total vulnerability. The biblical narrative shows us that whenever God withdraws, the void he leaves behind is quickly filled with destruction and disorder. It was so in Eden when the divine presence ceased to walk among men and death came to reign. It was so at the Tower of Babel when humanity, in its attempt to reach the heavens without God, was cast into confusion and dispersion. And now, in Ezekiel, we see this pattern repeating. The holy city is about to fall, and the temple that was once sacred is on the brink of ruin. This withdrawal is not a mere arbitrary punishment, but a direct response to human choice. God does not abandon his people without cause. It is the people themselves who, over time, reject his presence. The departure of divine glory does not happen overnight. It is the result of years of spiritual decline, a gradual replacement of truth with deception, of faith with arrogance. The people of Israel did not realize that by giving themselves over to idolatry and corruption, they were in reality pushing the divine presence away. And when they finally did realize it, it was too late. This pattern of withdrawal and collapse is not confined to the past. It repeats itself throughout history, and its effects can still be seen today. When a society abandons its spiritual principles, when it exchanges the pursuit of the sacred for selfish desires, it inevitably moves towards self-destruction. Without a moral center, without a connection to something higher, the foundations of civilization begin to crumble. The withdrawal of God's glory is not just a theological event, it is a reflection of human decadence. But the question remains, is there hope after this withdrawal? If God left the temple, does it mean he has permanently abandoned his people? Or is there a chance for redemption? The answer to these questions may lie in the visions Ezekiel later received, where new developments reveal that God's departure is not the end of the story, but the beginning of something much greater. Something even more profound is about to be unveiled. But the angels in these visions are not merely guardians or heralds of judgment. They are living reminders that the celestial plan is not limited to condemnation, but also extends to redemption. Every movement of the cherubim, every revelation granted to Ezekiel, points to something greater, something that transcends the immediate judgment of Jerusalem. The book of Ezekiel is not just an account of the fall of a nation. It is a testimony that the divine purpose is never halted by chaos. Even when destruction seems inevitable, God has already prepared the path for restoration. The presence of the angels with their glory and mystery signals that divine intervention is not only an act of punishment, but also a call for a new beginning. Ezekiel witnessed the glory of God departing from the temple, and this departure was a direct response to the corruption and idolatry of the people. However, this withdrawal was not final. What seemed like the end was, in reality, a period of transition. The book itself suggests that although God allowed the exile and destruction of Jerusalem, he did not completely abandon his people. The promise of restoration is woven into the fabric of the prophetic visions, where the same angels who witnessed God's glory departing also foreshadow its return. And when that return occurs, it will be on a much greater scale than before, not just for Israel, but for all of humanity. The symbolism of the cherubim is crucial to understanding this promise of renewal. They are not mere spectators of events. They are the carriers of divine glory, the ones who accompany God's decrees throughout history. In their presence, we find assurance that everything happening is part of a greater plan. Ezekiel describes them as beings of fire and light, with multiple faces and a radiance that reflects the Creator's power. This description is not accidental. Fire in the Bible has always been a symbol of both judgment and purification. Just as fire consumes the impure but also refines gold, God's action upon Israel was not merely meant to punish, but to purify and prepare the way for a better future. The book of Ezekiel echoes the hope of a future where evil will be eradicated and God's glory will be restored. However, this restoration will not come simply through the rebuilding of a physical temple, but through a deep spiritual transformation. The old Jerusalem fell because its people forgot their covenant with God, but the new Jerusalem, foreseen in these prophecies, will be different. In it, human hearts will be renewed, the relationship between Creator and creation will be restored, and God's ultimate purpose will be fully realized. Ezekiel himself announces this renewal in later chapters, where God promises to replace the people's heart of stone with a heart of flesh, one that is sensitive to his will. This prophecy points to a time when mankind will no longer depend solely on temples built by human hands to feel God's presence, but will have a direct connection with him. This concept resonates throughout many other biblical passages and suggests that the restoration promised by God is not merely physical, but also spiritual. When the angels appear in Ezekiel's visions, they remind us that God never abandons his people completely. Even in the darkest moments, there is a promise of light. Destruction, no matter how intense, is never the final chapter of the story. What follows this revelation is even more profound. Ezekiel's vision does not end with God's glory departing. There is something more, something that leads us to a new understanding of the role of angels, the purpose of purification, and the ultimate destiny of humanity. The path to redemption has been set, but its full manifestation still holds secrets waiting to be unveiled. Reflect. Are we living in times that echo these apocalyptic visions? The wars, the chaos, and the corruption, could they not be signs of an invisible battle that is still unfolding? The vision of Ezekiel, with its moving cherubim and the glory of God withdrawing, is not just a record of a past event. It resonates today as a silent warning that spiritual forces are at work, shaping the events of the visible world. When we look at the global scene filled with endless conflicts, moral crises, and natural disasters, we cannot ignore the possibility that all of this is part of a much larger struggle, a spiritual conflict between light and darkness that transcends the borders of what our eyes can perceive. Paul, in his letter to the Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 12, reveals a truth that directly echoes Ezekiel's visions. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. These words are not merely symbolic, they expose a hidden reality that operates behind the scenes of human existence. The forces of evil do not act randomly, but are organized in spiritual hierarchies, working relentlessly to corrupt, divide, and destroy. When Ezekiel saw the cherubim moving and the glory of God withdrawing, he was not only witnessing an isolated event, he was seeing the reflection of an ongoing spiritual battle, where every act of human corruption opens the door for these invisible forces to manifest more intensely in the physical world. But what does it mean, practically speaking, to live in times that reflect these apocalyptic visions? The increasing global instability, with endless wars, moral decay, and the loss of spiritual values, can be interpreted as symptoms of this spiritual conflict. The withdrawal of the divine presence does not happen suddenly. It is preceded by a series of human choices that, over time, reject the principles of truth, justice, and compassion. When a society replaces the sacred with materialism, when selfishness prevails over love for one's neighbor, it creates an environment ripe for the rulers of this dark world to exert their influence more aggressively. The result is a cycle of destruction that feeds on human rebellion, a cycle that only intensifies as the connection with the divine weakens. The connection between Ezekiel's visions and Paul's warning suggests that we are not dealing only with political or social phenomena. We are facing a spiritual battle that transcends time and space. This battle is not visible to the naked eye, but its consequences manifest in every area of life. The chaos we see around us may be just the tip of the iceberg of something much deeper. The fragmentation of families, the trivialization of evil, the exaltation of the ego, and the indifference to truth are clear signs that the spiritual forces of darkness are at work. trying to push humanity further away from the Creator's original purpose. However, just as Ezekiel's visions do not end with the withdrawal of God's glory, the Apostle Paul does not leave us without hope. Right after warning about this invisible battle, he provides the key to resisting. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. Ephesians 6 verse 11. This means that despite the chaos around us, there is a way of spiritual protection and resistance. The call is clear. Stay vigilant, strengthen yourself in faith, and understand that although darkness seems to prevail, the light will never be overcome. The question that remains is, are we prepared to recognize this invisible battle? Are we aware that what we see around us is merely a manifestation of something much deeper, something that touches the roots of the spiritual world? Ignoring this reality makes us vulnerable, but understanding it equips us to resist and stand firm against the advance of darkness. Just as Ezekiel was called to witness and proclaim the truth in times of crisis, we are also called today to discern the signs of the times and to understand that the battle we face is not just against earthly systems or governments. It is a spiritual battle that determines the fate of souls and the future of humanity. If the angels Ezekiel saw are witnesses to this eternal confrontation, what does that mean for us? Are we paying attention to the signs prepared for the arrival of that day foretold in the prophecies? Ezekiel's visions are not mere fragments of a distant past. They continue to echo through the generations, warning us about the ongoing clash between the forces of light and darkness. The cherubim he described, with their multiple faces and majestic movements, are not just messengers of judgment, but guardians of a greater truth. A truth that involves not only the history of Israel, but the entire history of humanity. They bear witness to a cosmic conflict that transcends time and space, a spiritual battle unfolding on levels our limited minds can scarcely comprehend. This war is not confined to ancient times. It continues to rage in the present, in the choices we make, the values we defend, and the spiritual forces we are willing to embrace or reject. In some way, we are all involved in this confrontation, whether on a personal or collective level. Therefore, Ezekiel's visions should not only be seen as a historical event, but as an eternal warning about the invisible forces that govern the course of the world. What is happening around us, the wars, the crises, the rise of corruption, are manifestations of these forces in conflict. Each of us is, in some way, involved in this battle. And the crucial question is, are we prepared to resist, to recognize the signs, and to align ourselves with the divine plan, or are we blind, ignoring the truth that lies before us? Our understanding of what is happening in the world must be broadened. It's not just about political or economic causes. We are witnessing a conflict far beyond the material. The scriptures repeatedly warn us about the day of the Lord, a time when truth will be revealed and destinies will be sealed. But just like in Ezekiel, the glory of God does not depart without offering a chance for repentance, change, and redemption. The judgment that approaches is not just an irreversible condemnation, but also a call to transformation, to return to the path of justice, truth, and purity. The presence of angels in Ezekiel's visions is a reminder that, while the spiritual battle continues, there is always an opportunity for redemption, for restoring the relationship with the Creator. Therefore, we must reflect on our own preparation for the future. Are we paying attention to the signs indicating the approach of a time of judgment and transformation? Are we aligning ourselves with the principles God has taught us, or are we allowing darkness to spread in our lives and in our society? Apocalyptic visions, far from being something to fear, should serve as a powerful reminder that the future is still being written, and while chaos and corruption may dominate momentarily, the divine light will ultimately prevail. The day foretold in the prophecies is inevitable, but it also brings with it the hope of a new beginning, of a new Jerusalem, where the glory of God will be fully and definitively restored. Continue with us on the portal of the unknown, where we will unravel the hidden messages that echo from ancient times. Together, we will explore the profound meaning of these prophecies and their impact on our present and future. Subscribe and activate notifications to not miss any of the developments of this journey. The end may not be as distant as we imagine, but what follows it, the restoration, renewal, and the definitive presence of God among us, will be something beyond all human understanding.